All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome into the Flurry Sports Week 12 NFL Headlines Recap live stream show. I am Henry John at Hangtime Sports on Twitter, and I am joined here tonight by Tanner. How are we doing, Tanner?
How's it going, guys? Um, it was a fun weekend of football. Kyler, though, really let me down this week in one of my leagues because if I won, I was going to lock up a playoff spot. And I'm playing the guy that's like first in the league right now. And I have Tyreek on my team and A.J. Brown. And he started the week off on Thanksgiving with the Deshaun Watson, Will Fuller stack. And so I already thought it was over. He also had Terry McLaurin on Thanksgiving, and then I came back and made it close. And my team did so well, but if I had just gotten a serviceable game from Kyler, I would have won. So
Yeah, and being a Cardinals fan, I'm sure he kind of let you down in more ways than just fantasy. That was a tough loss yesterday. Some
yeah,
some, some surprising results around the league in some of these games, and we can kind of dive into those a little bit more here as we get going. Um, First, though, I want to remind everyone we are brought to you by Monkey Knife Fight. You can see the promo code and all the details over to the side of the screen here. Sign up with the promo code Flurry. Gets you an instant deposit match up to $50 plus a free $5 to play with. They so many great contests over there. They got everything NFL, but of course all kinds of other sports as well. The NBA is going to be back soon. I think hockey is going to be around at some point. So all kinds of stuff happening over at Monkey Knife Fight. Head on over and check that out and use the promo code. Get yourself some free money while you're at it. Tanner, I guess I wanted to start off here. I threw together an outline here at the last minute, but just kind of diving into some of the notable headlines, a couple of which kind of went down this afternoon before we went on the air. And the first is, uh, man, from Thanksgiving to now Wednesday, this is like the longest week of NFL football that has ever happened. Don't quote me on that, but I think you'd be hard pressed to find another one as the NFL has now moved Ravens Steelers back another day to Wednesday. This game was supposed to go on Thanksgiving night. Then it got moved to Sunday. Then it got moved to Tuesday. Now we're going to Wednesday. So we get a little hump day football. And I don't think we've had that yet, despite all these cancellations and postponements and moving around. So something unique here. Um, I guess I'll just get your thoughts and reactions on it, and then I can kind of fill in the cracks or whatever. Your general reactions, and then from a fantasy standpoint, obviously this is going to move back waiver calendars here a day. ESPN already came out and said they're not going to process waivers until it would be Wednesday into Thursday, I think is what they're going to be doing.
okay.
So, I need to be doing differently here approaching this. It kind of just feels like an inconvenience to me at this point, but anyway, I'll let you talk.
Yeah, it's kind of just a jumble right now because they've changed it multiple times, like you said, and now I'm seeing that Dobbins and Ingram are both eligible to play. But based on like the actual COVID, and you're supposed to wait 10 days once you start showing symptoms at least. And I'm pretty sure Dobbins and Ingram both uh, like tested positive like before the Thanksgiving game. So definitely hasn't been enough time for that. So I don't know how they're supposed to be eligible to play by moving the game to Wednesday. Uh, so I'm just a little confused on like everything that's going on right now, and it almost feels unfair to the Steelers because you look at the Broncos situation and they had to play without a quarterback this week, and it feels like the NFL is doing everything in their power to have this game be as competitive as possible. Um, so I don't understand why those players are eligible, and it just doesn't seem like there's continuity in the whole process.
Not at all. That's, I think, the thing that disgusts me the most about this is the Broncos got absolutely screwed. And, it's almost like the NFL, the league is making an example of Denver, saying this is what happens when you don't follow protocols when they didn't have a quarterback because a backup quarterback tested positive, and it was guys who were in contact with him were not allowed to step on the field even though they had negative tests. And now we're seeing Baltimore have their game postponed almost a full week. If this goes off on Wednesday, it'll be 6 days that they got it pushed back. They're going to get these running backs back if what you heard here is true. Um, which way are we landing on this, I guess, because those are two very different ways of handling the situation, and it's not a good look for the NFL, in my opinion. You know, the Ravens, I guess, are going to still kind of be up against it here without Lamar Jackson. Is Robert Griffin III that much of a drop off? I think you and I alone would have different opinions on that, just from our past discussions about Jackson. But it is interesting, and I feel for the Steelers for sure. You know, kind of a good point that I heard on a show today is Pittsburgh's going to have to turn around and play Washington next Sunday, and that could be a game where they're kind of overlooking it, and plus this short week. Whereas the Baltimore-Dallas game has already been moved back, so it just seems like the Steelers are getting screwed in every way possible here, and the Ravens seem to. I don't know. Maybe there's a little money being thrown at the league. No, I didn't say that, but yeah, it is interesting to follow for sure. So I guess when it comes to waivers, you can submit them and such as you always would here, but be mindful that the week 12 is going to extend out here longer than we would have expected. I wonder if I had those days correct. I'm just going to try and find that. Darren, did you have any other thoughts? I want to make sure on ESPN's ruling here with processing waivers.
Yeah, there's just not only is it a huge game for the NFL, but from a fantasy standpoint, there's so many important pieces that are going on in that game, and it's still entirely kind of up in the air at this point. So I just want more clarification on everything that's going on with that game, because as far as the way the COVID rules are supposed to be and what the NFL is doing, it doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah, no, 100% agree.
And I didn't know that I didn't think about waivers being affected and having to push that back, but that makes total sense. So I'm glad that ESPN's doing that.
Yeah, it's if it was Tuesday night, they could have still run them as normal, but you would have had that limited window to get your claims in. And I can't remember if they did that when the Bills and Titans played there on Tuesday or not. So I'm on looking at the official rules right now, talking about moving the game to Wednesday. If the game is played on Tuesday, the current matchup will be extended. Otherwise, would have ended on Monday to include the additional game. The game is rescheduled in place of a later bye week. Current week is reassigned. I'm not seeing a whole heck of a lot in those rules. I want to say I got an update on it somewhere here, though. So I did get a Bleacher Report ping a little bit ago. ESPN Fantasy will be extended through Wednesday to cover the game, which is, by the way, a mid-afternoon game. Waivers will be pushed another day. So they were already going to have to be pushed back, I think is what they were doing for the Tuesday game. I don't know. Maybe the situation is kind of still up in the air and we're just trying to figure it out. But at any rate, Ravens-Steelers looks like it's going to be on Wednesday now. So time will tell. The other big news of the afternoon, Houston Texans wide receiver Will Fuller. He's now going to be missing the rest of the season, suspended 6 games. So that's going to be the 5 remaining this year for Houston and the first game next year. It was for an illegal performance-enhancing drug. Fuller came out on Instagram and said that he wasn't aware that it was illegal. The doctor who gave it to him was not aware. You can kind of read that for what it's worth. A lot of guys have said similar things and been caught a second time. I think Will Fuller is a guy that I'm okay giving the benefit of the doubt here, at least for now. But in terms of fantasy impact, Tanner, this is huge because this is the Texans wide receiver 1 we're talking about.
Yeah, and not just a wide receiver 1 for the Texans. He's been a wide receiver 1 for fantasy this season, and I think he's one of those guys that has been very quietly one of the best receivers for fantasy. I think a lot of people might not realize how good he's been this season unless you have him on your team. But if you look at it in PPR right now, he's the wide receiver 7 on the year. He's been so consistent. He feels like he's scoring a touchdown every single week. And then I feel like he finally has his game and moment in prime time on Thanksgiving, 2 touchdowns in that game and 170 plus yards. And then now he's gone for the rest of the season. Like Will Fuller's been helping carry a lot of teams now, and now he's gone.
Yeah, it is disappointing. I was able to benefit in a couple of leagues from that big Thanksgiving Day performance, and now just like that, we're kind of left scrambling here. Brandon Cooks is probably going to step up here, you would have to think, and be the new wide receiver 1 for Deshaun Watson and the Texans. But in terms of fantasy impact, there's not a whole lot left behind him. Randall Cobb just went on IR after injuring his ankle, I believe it was, a couple of weeks ago. And the Texans also just released Kenny Stills. He cleared waivers. He's a free agent. He might be back in Houston sooner than he would have expected. I think anyone would have expected. But you're looking at Kiki QT, Isaiah Coulter down the depth chart here. That's all that's left at the wide receiver position. It feels like they got to bring someone in, especially winning a couple games here, not mathematically out of the playoff race just yet. Would you be looking to add any of these names? Would you kind of be waiting to see what they do a little more? What are your thoughts there for trying to replace Will Fuller, I guess, in-house if it had to be?
Yeah, I think it's really hard to judge other than Brandon Cooks, the receivers you just said. Like, I want to see what they do with Stills. But I do think Cooks gets the biggest upgrade here. But I would say he's the only one in this offense that gets an upgrade, just because the Texans' run game has been pretty non-existent all season. And so it's pretty much been all on Deshaun Watson's back to make plays. And then you just got rid of his best playmaker. So I'm having a hard time seeing how, I think this is a huge blow for the Texans offense. And I think it's really going to limit what they can do on the offensive side of the ball. Brandon Cooks is going to have to step up, but ultimately I would be downgrading every Texans piece right now, except for Cooks, just because they're going to have to force feed him targets like he hasn't been getting.
Yeah, it's going to be an uphill battle, I would say here for sure, especially this is a team that can't run the ball. And that's what makes me interested about trying to fill the void of Will Fuller here with an in-house replacement. And that is the Texans have not successfully ran the football all season long. David Johnson's on IR. Duke Johnson's been relatively ineffective. CJ Prosise more of a pass-catching back in his own right here. So it feels like a receiver is going to step up and have fantasy value. But like you said, there's no way really to know for sure at this point which guy that might be, or if it might be a guy who's not even with the team right now as we're doing this show. So definitely something to monitor here for sure, because those who lost Will Fuller, they're going to be needing to replace some points and probably heading into the fantasy playoffs with as good as he has been here the last several weeks. So
looking at the Texans' next 3 games, they get the Colts, then the Bears, and then the Colts again. So they're going through murderer's row for defenses, and they just lost Fuller. You might even want to be looking for a potential option other than Watson, in these games, because I just don't see how. I think he's been on fire. So I think he'll be serviceable, but I feel like Will Fuller being gone really takes away his ceiling in some of these big games that he's been delivering lately.
Yeah, for sure. There's one league where I have both Watson and Cam Newton, and as bad as Cam Newton looked yesterday, as bad as he looked in several of these weeks, better schedule here the next few weeks. And now you throw in the Will Fuller loss. I might be on my way to playing a little bit cute with my quarterback position, and it may come back to bite me, but maybe week 13 is a good time to test it out before the playoffs and see just how bad it might be. more on that Colts defense later, though. When we get to the top performances of the week, they got run over by Tennessee. That was surprising to see. There is one other headline I wanted to touch on. This one's kind of a little older, so not necessarily breaking any news here on the Flurry Sports stream tonight with this one, but the Detroit Lions cleaning house after that Thanksgiving beatdown, firing head coach Matt Patricia, firing GM Bob Quinn. Both have been there for a few years now. Patricia's record 13-29-1 since he took over in 2018. Quinn had been there a little longer with the team in the general manager role since 2016. Detroit just 31-43-1 during his tenure there. Tanner, any ideas where Detroit might be looking to go from here? You can talk maybe how does this impact the team, kind of fantasy outlook going forward the rest of the season. This Lions team's got so many injuries. Man, Matthew Stafford, Mohamed Sanu, I didn't even realize he was with the team until Thanksgiving, and he's out there making a few plays. But Stafford just looks so uncomfortable, doesn't have any of his main targets really to throw to here. Just kind of your overall assessment, I guess, on the move and the Lions here going forward the rest of this year, probably a lost year for them.
Yeah, this felt like a move that Lions fans really wanted to happen. I think a lot of people had given up on Patricia for a little while now. My roommate is a big Lions fan, and his dad wore a Barry Sanders jersey during that game and was cheering for the Texans the entire game because he thought if they lost, they would fire Patricia. And then it happened. I was like, oh shoot, like he's like dead on about that.
Yeah.
There hasn't been a lot of success since he's been there. And I wanted to see it ride out a little bit longer because the Lions, it's like last season, if you remember, they started out really strong. Like they won some big games. They were really competitive against the Packers, and there was a few really bad calls that lost them in the Packers game. And then they played the Chiefs really competitive. And I was like, dang, this is Matt Patricia's start of his second season, and he's out here winning some big games, playing the Packers and the Chiefs, looking really good. And then Stafford goes down to that injury last year. So it feels like they were never able to really get it going. So I was like, okay, this year's going to be a fresh start, and they could be a sneaky pick to maybe win a lot of games. And it just hasn't panned out like that at all. I mean, I think the Kenny Golladay injury, he's been hurt all year. I think that's been really big for the team. But then you got Swift looking like he's going to be a really solid running back in the NFL. So I saw the path for success for this team, even with Patricia as the coach. But I guess his time just ran out.
Yeah, at the end of the day, I think winning it's the name of the game here in the NFL. And I'm like you. I had power rated, I thought, the Lions a lot higher than a lot of people coming into the year. And like you, I kind of saw the path for success there. You knew the defense wasn't going to be great this year, working in a lot of young guys. But still, even as soon as a couple of weeks ago, they were not out of the race by any means. It's sitting there at 4-5, and now a couple of bad losses later, and that's about all she wrote here for Detroit. Trying to get back in this NFC playoff picture. I think the firing is kind of, we all knew it was coming. The name was circulating more and more. This year, though, there's a lot of injuries in Detroit, and that's been the story, I think, since Patricia took over the job. And so, is he a good coach? You can debate that. I think he makes a lot of questionable decisions for sure. But in a way, I kind of do feel bad for him. Just that it seemed like every year, last year they had Matthew Stafford, didn't have him for the entire second half of the year. They had a winning record when he went down with the back injuries. The year before, they were a shell of the team that started the season. I think Stafford had injuries that year as well and probably missed a couple of games. So in a way, I do feel bad for Patricia not having the full complement here, really, to ever put it together for a season. But that's how it goes, I guess, in this league. It's a war of attrition, and you got to be able to produce no matter who you're running out there. Next, I guess we can jump into some of the top fantasy performances of Week 12. and we can't start anywhere but Tyreek Hill here, I think. His 57.9 fantasy points yesterday. Uh, that's the most we've seen in a long, long time. Doing some quick research here, it was an all-time day, second only to Jerry Rice in terms of PPR fantasy scoring. Rice had a 5 touchdown game in 1990, in which he also had over 200 receiving yards. But yeah, 13 catches, 269 yards, 3 touchdowns for Tyreek Hill yesterday. Poor Carlton Davis. Tanner, have you ever seen anything like this? Because numerically, we definitely haven't. But what a show!
I've never seen anything like it. Um, I actually wasn't watching the beginning of this game because I started doing something with my family, but he had 200 over 202 by with 4 minutes left in the first quarter. But I love to see it because I'm a big Tyreek Hill fan. Like I always say, he's in my top 3 receivers in the NFL, and I think that's more of, I guess, a bolder take because he's not that prototypical guy. So whenever I see Tyreek Hill succeed, I'm just like, yes, this dude is really that good. And it's not like he's just a speed guy either. Like he makes amazing contested catches. I mean, what he does with his speed on the field, the way it opens up so many things for other people on the team. He's amazing. He's so fun to watch, and just 200 over 202 by the end of the first quarter. Like it's ridiculous. It was great.
Yeah, it was definitely great for people who owned him. I went up against him in a league this week, and my guys did fine, and then there was that across the way for me, and so we're just gonna eat an L, and there's not much you can do if you're on the wrong end of a performance like that. The Chiefs with some encouraging matchups for Hill and really all their receivers down the stretch here too. The Broncos this week, the Dolphins, the Saints, which that's the way you beat them, is through the air. Can't really run it against New Orleans defense, and then Atlanta in what would be championship weekend for the fantasy playoffs. So
It's nice.
could be more on the way here from Tyreek Hill as he just seems to be on a mission. That one play, I think it was toward the end of the second quarter where Mahomes just threw it and Carlton Davis never even looked back and it just went over his head and Hill just caught it
Yeah, the late hands.
yeah, just insane. His head was right there and Hill just pulls it in like it's nothing. Carlton Davis it's like he had no idea. But an otherworldly performance from Tyreek Hill. How about some running backs?
On the third touchdown, I wasn't sure if they were showing a replay or not. I was like, wait, did this just happen? Is this live?
Yeah, that was what kind of game that was from Tyreek Hill. Something else and fun to watch and fun to witness as a fan. Some running backs who took the weekend by storm. Derrick Henry in that Titans-Colts game that Tennessee so desperately needed to win. They got the job done. Derrick Henry, a big part of that, 178 yards rushing, 3 touchdowns, 38.5 fantasy points in PPR scoring. And right behind him, the only other running back to surpass the 30-point threshold on the week was Antonio Gibson. He did that on Thanksgiving Day. 115 yards, 3 touchdowns, and he added 5 catches in there as well for Washington in that win over the Cowboys that they also very much needed. Tanner, in looking at the top 5, I guess what stood out to me is just the 4 studs right up here at the top. We have Henry Gibson, but then the next 2 in line, both over 26 points on the week, James Robinson and Nick Chubb. These guys are weekly starts, and I'll let you kind of break down their performances however you want. But one I guess, kind of wrinkle I want to throw at you is going forward, which of these 4 would you, I guess, be most concerned with in somehow having a low week that might cost owners in the playoffs?
Okay. I guess I'll get to your question after I break it down, and I'll save that for.
Go for it.
So it's Derrick Henry season right now. He he has evolved. It's wintertime, and he's in his Yeti form, and this is what happens every year. It's crazy. Like after Thanksgiving, he just unleashes another mode inside of him. Uh, and like this, it felt like there were so many crazy performances this week, like Tyreek having as many as he did by the first quarter, and then Derrick Henry pretty much doing all of the damage like within a half. Um, he's so fun to watch, like the power, the speed, and he has really good vision too. And as far as Antonio Gibson, I was trying to trade for him on Thanksgiving morning because I thought he was going to have a really nice game against the Cowboys. I didn't think it was going to be that good. And he's been doing great lately, and he looks great. And it seems like he's getting more and more involved. They're getting him more and more touches. The only running back to have more points than Derrick Henry, or it's vice versa, but Derrick Henry and Antonio Gibson over the last 5 games are the 2 top fantasy scoring running backs. So it just shows you how consistent and good Gibson has been over a month at this point now. And I wish I'd been able to trade for him, but the trade deadline was the day after Thanksgiving, so that's out the window. And then also and then the running back that I would want the most out of these 4 going forward would be Derrick Henry, just because of the schedule. I know you said the one I wouldn't want, but just to answer the other side of the question really quick, Derrick Henry's schedule coming up is ridiculous. He gets the Browns, then the Jags, then the Lions, then the Packers. So if you're in a league and the guy who owns Derrick Henry might not make the playoffs, I would be praying that he doesn't, because it's looking like you're going to see a string of performances from Derrick Henry where he's going to keep going off.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just looking at those schedules as well, and that was the one that stood out to me. And I think Derrick Henry, arguably the best running back in the league, just from a talent standpoint as well. He's going to be feasting well after Thanksgiving here, by the looks of that schedule. Kind of looking at some other schedules, just trying to maybe figure out which guy that might have that dud week. Nick Chubb is one I wonder about, and I know ever since he's come back, he's really been the dominant guy in that backfield over Kareem Hunt. Kareem Hunt's actually had a couple of lower fantasy outputs here the last couple of weeks himself. The Browns get Tennessee this week, and then the 3 weeks of the fantasy playoffs, it's Baltimore, which their defense has been banged up. But if they get some of those guys back here, perhaps they're going to be that's a huge game as far as the AFC playoffs go. Baltimore, Cleveland, and then you've got the Giants and the Jets the next couple of weeks. And I always say, the Giants and the Jets. Giants are fighting for their playoff lives. That defense is playing well, and the Jets are better at stopping the run than people think. That's also the Jets' last home game. It might be their last real shot to win a game. They're in Foxborough week 17. Maybe they show up there. I don't know. They were able to contain the Dolphins quite well. Of course, that rushing attack nowhere near what Cleveland brings to the table. But that schedule is interesting to me, and you could really see it going either way. From a PPR standpoint, though, Derrick Henry's matchups are fine to help him avoid that, but Gibson and Robinson bring a lot more value, I think, in that role than Chubb does. And so that would lead me to, I think, lean toward being most worried that Chubb has a disappointing day in the playoffs. Do you kind of agree with that?
Chubb he's like Derrick Henry could be the best runner in football. I think Nick Chubb could also be the best runner. And with the Browns being so competitive for a playoff spot right now and just how good Chubb is, I don't think he would be my pick, but in a PPR league, he is a guy, he's not going to see any receptions. So if he maybe gets bottled up a little bit on the ground, then it could lead to a disappointing performance. It's really hard to pick a name out of these 4 guys. Just they've been so good, and I wouldn't go with Chubb just because he's so freaking good. If you force me to pick a guy, Um, I'm probably gonna. I want to say James Robinson because of just the entire offense of Jacksonville and them losing Minshew and then having these backup quarterbacks. And I traded away James Robinson in a league a few weeks ago because I thought that the offense might sputter as a whole, but that hasn't really proved to be correct. Like he's still seen an insane amount of volume. I have a stat here for Robinson. So he has 194 of Jacksonville, like of attempts this season for Jacksonville. All the other running backs combined have 7. So just he
Talk
is
about
the entire offense.
yeah, that's crazy. The Jaguars' schedule might make some people pause. Minnesota here last week of the regular season, Tennessee, Baltimore, Chicago. That's not easy, but you know what the stat Tanner just threw out, Robinson's volume is just so high that it's hard not to trust him. He has a bit of a PPR floor, and there's just not a lot going on in this Jacksonville offense around him. What shape are the Bears going to be? Championship week. They kind of were rolling over and died yesterday against Green Bay when the offense couldn't do anything. There's clear imbalance there. That's got to be frustrating for the defensive players there in Chicago. Mike Glennon was not terrible yesterday either. Um, so it's tough. You don't expect any of these guys, I think, to have a real letdown performance in the playoffs, but just kind of fun to poke around and see which ones we might have thought could suffer that letdown spot when you need them most. But moving on here, a couple other running backs that I just wanted to throw out there. Tanner, you can talk about one of them or all of them or whatever you want to do here. Austin Eckler made his return yesterday for the Chargers. Was triumphant, 23.9 fantasy points against the Bills. Latavius Murray, granted a lot of garbage time in that game against the Broncos. The unfortunate Broncos who were without a quarterback. Thanks a lot, NFL. But Murray had 25.6 fantasy points. Alvin Kamara also dealing with a little injury there. So kind of worth monitoring that status going forward. And Wayne Gallman of the Giants, 18.1 fantasy points. Not a ton of offense in that game against Cincinnati, but he found the end zone again, over 90 yards rushing. Giants have been running the ball better lately. So, Tanner, I'll leave it open to you on any of those 3 guys.
Yeah, Wayne Gallman has been, like, if you go ahead and you look at his game logs, he's been an amazing pickup. Like, he's been, I believe, if you take the last 5, I had a stat before this week on him. Like, he was like the RB6 in points per game over like the previous 5 weeks. So he's been a middling RB1. So he's just been getting it done. Like, he's been scoring. He's taking advantage of his opportunities. So I've been impressed with him. And I'm sorry, what was the first running back that you brought up? I don't know. Eckler. Yeah. Yeah, Eckler. I don't think Eckler looked like fully healthy in the game. Like, he didn't seem to have like that burst once he got to the outside, like he usually does. But it was really nice to see him back, and he saw a bunch of receptions. Like, he was the running back for that team, and they've been desperately missing him. It's interesting that his first game back was Justin Herbert's like only bad game, and I think people might try and draw connections between that. I just think that was purely coincidental. But yeah, I mean, Eckler's hamstring injury was one of the worst injuries of the season. Like, when you saw it, it looked like the hamstring just completely tore off the bone. Like, he couldn't even get himself up on the injury cart once he got to the sideline. So I was worried we weren't going to see him for the rest of the season, and I've been talking about that. So the fact that he felt healthy enough to be in this game, and then the fact that he stayed in the game pretty much the entire time was really good to see.
Yeah, he was in there till the end. He didn't have a ton of rushing yards, I think, kind of to your point there, but a lot of receptions and a fine fantasy point showing as well here in his return. Good to see Eckler back out there. And he was in there until the end, like you said, as well, right down to when Anthony Lynn called that running play with no timeouts and 25 seconds left to try and find the end zone. I don't really know quite what was happening there, or on several other occasions for the Chargers yesterday and their coaching staff. Anthony Lynn's got to go. That team will be better off for it. I'm going to leave it at that. And Wayne Gallman too. I'll touch on him quick as well since you did. The Giants shuffled their linemen around up front, and it's paying off. They've got some younger guys playing more in there as well, and they're running the football with success. Yesterday against Cincinnati wasn't an anomaly. They ran with success against the Eagles as well. And Gallman's touches has just been going up every single week. So that was interesting to hear your stat there. But I just pulled it up quick. And week 7, 10 carries for Gallman, 12 in week 8, 14 and 9, 18 and 10. They had their bye, 24 yesterday. So it's a steady increase here for Wayne Gallman. Not sure on the status of Daniel Jones. I'm assuming he'll be fine after he had a hamstring injury yesterday. But yeah, Gallman should stay in line for work here, as he's looked better than Devontae Freeman ever did, even before he went down with injury. Another receiver, going back to that Browns-Jaguars game, guess I kind of boffed the segue, the transition there, but Jarvis Landry, we finally saw him get going here and have a nice day. We've kind of been waiting for it ever since Odell Beckham Jr. went down with injury, and it just hasn't been happening. 143 yards receiving and a touchdown yesterday on 8 receptions, 28.3 fantasy points. Tanner, your thoughts, and do you trust Jarvis Landry going forward? And I think the underlying question there for me is, do you trust Baker Mayfield as a passer?
That's actually a great question. I trust Jarvis fully. I think he's super talented, but I don't trust Baker as a passer. He's been sitting on the waiver wire in one of my leagues like the last 3 weeks, and I keep telling myself I want to pick him up, but he just hasn't been coming through at all. Like last week, it was like I thought last week it was going to be the week where he finally came through and everybody had given up on him, just because without OBJ there, he's the best option there, and we've seen him get it done in the offense with Baker, and then it finally happened this week. So it doesn't surprise me at all. I think this performance was bound to happen, and I kind of do like him going forward. It is hard to trust Baker on any given week, but Jarvis is gonna make plays, and he had a game. I think it was one of the bad weather games 2 weeks ago, where he kind of got robbed on a touchdown pass that he should have caught. So that would have been a decent fantasy day that week, and it was like inches away from having a touchdown there. So I need to pull up their schedule going forward, but I think he's a decent pickup, and he might be somebody I would be targeting on the waiver wire this week.
Yeah, if he's available somehow. I don't have his ownership in front of me, but they have a good, what would figure to be a positive matchup against the Titans secondary here this coming week. I do know that for sure. He is the lead receiver there. It's just a question of, can Mayfield consistently pass? I'm not willing to make that bet, but I think if Landry's getting enough targets in a game, there is a floor there. I guess that's where I'll leave it. I don't know. Would you kind of agree with that, or?
Yeah, I definitely think there's a floor there, and then he has the upside to bring you a good week like he did this week.
Yeah. All right. Well, so good that we agree there. Couple other receivers. I just wanted to throw their names out there, and again, you can kind of chime in on any of them like we did the running backs. Deebo Samuel, another guy returning from injury. Big day. He didn't even find the end zone, and he had a big day. 24.2 fantasy points, double-digit receptions, 133 receiving yards. Robbie Anderson with the Panthers. That one's interesting to me because it seems like every time it's supposed to be DJ Moore, or DJ Moore's, taking back his role there as the wide receiver 1 in Carolina, Anderson still has a good game. He's been up and down a little more recently, but it's still been a stable production out of Robbie Anderson in Carolina. And then a guy we haven't seen among top performers or even average performers really all year, T.Y. Hilton with the Colts, 18.1 fantasy points. He led the day for them receiving. Is that a blip on the radar? The Colts are in contention here. No one really has emerged yet as a pass catcher. A lot of people think it's going to be Michael Pittman Jr., the rookie out of USC, but he only had 2 catches yesterday. So, Tanner, any thoughts on these guys?
Yeah, I'll start with Debo. Sometimes I watch him play and I'm like, oh my God, this guy's the best receiver in the league. Like he's so good. And
So good.
yeah, and he like people can't tackle him. And then as soon as he breaks that first tackle, he's just like sprinting towards the end zone and he's so hard to bring down. Um, I think he could be a really nice player down the final stretch here because he was finally healthy and looked great for that game. And I think there's a huge level of trust in him, like Shanahan really trusts him, and he's a big part of this offense. Um, it's going to be interesting with him and Ayuk there. Debo's somebody that like I would feel completely comfortable starting Debo with Ayuk there, but maybe not so much Ayuk with Debo there. But yeah, I really like Debo going forward, and like I thought he was the biggest difference maker in that game. Just all the plays that he was making, and they try and game plan him like as much as they can. And then for T.Y. Hilton, I for me, I'm gonna chalk it up to a blip on the radar. Uh, he hasn't been good all season, and Pittman is kind of emerging there. So I think you could see a situation next week where it's Pittman who has a really nice week, and Ty comes in with like 3 or 4 receptions. So I can't trust Ty personally.
Yeah, I think I'm in the same boat there with you. And yesterday's line, 4 catches, 81 yards, and a touchdown. So the touchdown really buoyed the wide receiver 14 on the week. Of course, a couple games still left to be played here in Week 12 as we speak. But without that, you're looking at 12 points essentially. And I think that probably still would have been his highest output of the year just because there was a little more substance to those catches, but still the same typical 3 to 4 catches that we're getting, I think, from him a week. Nothing to get too excited about there with T.Y. Hilton, in my opinion, either. And Debo Samuel, just one of a number of 49ers who came back yesterday. They got the job done, upsetting the Rams 5-6. I guess my question to you, Jimmy Garoppolo is still out, and I don't know exactly when he's expected to be back, although last I had seen and anything I've pulled up today, it's still not expected to be soon. But they're getting guys back defensively. They got Trent Williams back up front on the offensive line. Ayuk will be back. Samuel's back. Mostert back yesterday. Richard Sherman, another big name in there. Can San Francisco contend for a wild card in expanded playoffs with Nick Mullins at quarterback if they stay healthy otherwise?
You know, I mean, they absolutely can go out there on any given week and beat anybody, in my opinion. Just they're such a good team. And the fact that we're sitting here even saying that they're possibly in contention despite everything they've gone through this season is amazing. Like that Rams game said a lot for me. And then if those players are healthy, like their defense is pretty strong. Like they can do it. I mean, the odds are against them just because of where they're at currently. Like they're last place in that division right now. But the NFC West is just ridiculous because, like, I'm a Cardinals fan, and the fact that the Niners have been going through so much, I think, has been the only thing giving the Cardinals playoff hopes all season. And it's looking like the Niners might catch the Cardinals as soon as next week, despite everything that they've gone through.
Yeah, it's crazy to think San Francisco has a shot, but you look at their schedule here. Next Monday night, it was supposed to be a home game against the Bills, and I don't know what the 49ers are doing exactly as far as moving around because of the Bay Area being shut down here, not allowing sporting events was what I heard over the weekend. So I don't know where exactly that game will be, but they upset the Bills. You've got Washington, you got the Cowboys, and then you've got it all right in front of you, the Cardinals and Seahawks the last 2 weeks. It's not impossible, to say the least. And this is an NFC West division where looking around the rest of the NFC, there's not going to be a wild card team, I don't think, coming out of the North, let alone the East, which is a one-bid division. So you've got the Saints and Bucks, but you're looking at probably at least two if Minnesota creeps back into the conversation, I think, but probably three teams out of this division. Um, I wouldn't count them out just yet. Yesterday was huge.
Yeah, they definitely needed it. Um, Man, I'm just impressed like with that game. I mean if I'm gonna guess it, like I'm gonna say that they don't make it just because I think they're gonna need play from Mullins. I don't think he'll bring. Like he's looked pretty bad at points this season. But it could definitely happen.
Yeah, I think they're going to need to have a stable running game in each of those games to be effective. I don't trust Nick Mullins. He looks great at times, and he's a great game manager when he wants to be. Leading that drive there yesterday to both tie and ultimately win the game with field goals. But some throws he makes too, like you said, those leave a little bit to be desired. We do have a break in the action here. A question has been dropped in on YouTube, and we are under pressure to answer. Um, I'm going to butcher this name, so I apologize, but Varun Vedantham. He has Eric Ebron and Miles Sanders in his lineup. Currently losing by 3 points in a PPR league, and his opponent has only the Eagles defense left. Options available at tight end beyond Ebron include Will Dissly, Jacob Hollister, Richard Rodgers. This is a must-win for the playoffs. Are we sticking with Ebron or pivoting to, I guess, what would be a waiver wire option here? Dissly, Hollister, or Rodgers?
Oh man. So right away, I'm ruling out the Seahawks tight ends just because I mean you even got to worry about Greg Olsen there too, and like those guys could combine for one reception. Like I mean I could pull up their game logs right now, but they I just don't think you can depend on them at all. And I know Ebron has the risk of not playing at this point, but as of right now, the game is happening. So that's good enough for me to definitely stick with Ebron in that situation over those two. So then it comes down to Richard Rodgers. Um, Man, I mean, I mean, Goddard finally came through with a good game. I would stick with Ebron there. I mean, I feel like all the other three tight ends are guys that could like combine for one or two catches throughout the week. So I couldn't trust them. So I would stick with Ebron. And I feel like with Miles Sanders in the lineup, that's still probably good enough to pull out the win. So Ebron would be my pick there.
Yeah, I'm just looking up a few things here. I would agree Ebron is the guy I would stay with there for sure. I've actually been rolling with him most weeks at tight end in a league. It's a deeper league, and there's just not really backups available because for whatever reason, a bunch of people drafted two tight ends, and I'm like, all right, fine, I'll pick up Ebron, and I've been starting him. That's kind of the tight end position where you're at, and he's been getting touchdowns most of the weeks to kind of save his outputs. Seattle is terrible in terms of fantasy points allowed to receivers. They're better at covering tight ends. So that kind of puts me off Richard Rodgers there. And then Greg Olsen got hurt last week. But
Did he?
yeah, so but at the same time, like I see what you're saying, Will Dissly and Jacob Hollister, like you don't know which guy it's going to be if it's going to be a guy at all. You got DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, even David Moore, if we want to go further down the line there. They're getting Chris Carson back tonight. So many weapons in that Seattle offense. I think it's hard to trust any of those tight ends. And like you said, Tanner, having Miles Sanders in the lineup, going up against just the Eagles defense, I like the odds to pull out the win anyway, I think. So you should be looking good to advance to the fantasy playoffs there. So we'll segue back from that. I guess just kind of wrap up some fantasy week 12 talk here. I wrote down a whole list of guys who stood out to me as disappointments on the week. One of those guys, so I don't know if you'll want to talk more about him or just avoid that altogether, but if there's anyone that jumped out to you, feel free to add them in, or you can touch on any of these guys. Darren Waller, to continue the tight end talk a little. Only 6.3 points. A lot of Rams made the list. Cam Akers did all right. Broke a long run, had a touchdown, but really that was the extent of his production. And meanwhile, both Malcolm Brown and Darrell Henderson less than 2 fantasy points. Ezekiel Elliott under 3 fantasy points, a Thanksgiving Day dud. And then Cooper Kupp was also on the list there with the Rams after that huge Monday night game. He only had 2 catches yesterday. So, any thoughts on disappointing Week 12 showings?
Yeah, we can continue with Kyler, sadly.
All right.
Like, I mean, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt here because he's been right there with Mahomes in contention for the quarterback 1 spot this season. And this has been, like, since week 4, he's been the QB 11 or better every time. Like, he's never been outside of a quarterback 1 finish. Or was that all season? But anyway, so this was his first bad week, really. But it does concern me because he was questionable all week with the shoulder injury. And like I've been watching him all season, and right at the beginning of this game, I turned to the people I was watching it with, and I was like, Kyler's not going to have a good game. Like there's something just seemed really off about him. Like the way, like the decisions he was making in the pocket, like where he should have gone. Like it was so clear at times that stepping up in the pocket was the right thing to do based on the defender. But instead he would kind of just run towards the sideline and force a bad situation. And it seemed like he did that all game. And he only ran the ball like 2 times up until a point that was really late in the game where then he just needed to start running. But he didn't run the ball nearly as much as he has been doing the entire season. And it just makes me wonder if that shoulder injury is actually a big concern. So I'm a little worried about the shoulder based on what I saw, just because it looked so off and so different from what we've seen for the rest of the season.
Yeah, it's a notable concern, I think, for sure. He didn't look right to me second half of that Thursday game against Seattle, which would have been, well, geez, a week and a half ago now already. Time flies around here, but yeah, and I think it definitely carried over into yesterday. Granted, the Patriots did some things well defensively, I thought, to kind of throw different looks at him and such, but I agree with your assessment. He's not 100%, and it'll be interesting to see how that kind of carries forward. I guess I'll just bring up the Rams running backs here a little more. I feel like we talk about them every week, Jake, Coach, and I, on the Start Sit show on Thursdays. Coach has always got him in the sit spot, and man, I don't know. I don't know how you start one of these guys comfortably unless you're in a deep league and you need a flex here down the stretch of the season. You just don't know who it's going to be. Darrell Henderson has looked the best consistently over the season, but he's laid 3 eggs in a row, I think it is now. Granted, all against tough run defenses. Cam Akers gets a little bit of a hot hand yesterday, and Sean McVay clearly willing to ride with him there. Malcolm Brown is just kind of like in and out, kind of like the second guy to whoever gets more run between Akers and Henderson, it seems like each week. I don't know who you can plug in and be comfortable going, especially with the playoffs coming up here. And I want to say it's Darrell Henderson, but the schedule doesn't exactly gets easier than it's been for the Rams running backs. Cardinals, Patriots, Jets, Seahawks are the next 4 to take you through fantasy championship weekend. But also, you lost Andrew Whitworth here up front. I don't know if the Rams are running the ball consistently. And even if they are, you don't know which back's going to get those touches. Do you have any thoughts, I guess? Like, are you on a guy here more so than I am? But I can't figure it out.
Yeah, so I wouldn't say I'm on him. It's more of me hoping, because I've been hoping all season for this guy. But on every Tuesday show, Zach and I talk about Cam Akers. And we both think that he's the best running back on this team. And if they would just give him the volume, he would be a stud. Like there's no question about it. And then I think you saw it this week with that on that one drive where he broke off that long run, looked more explosive than the other 2 running backs. It was one of the best runs from that team all season. And then it set him up for his touchdown. So like that drive was all him. And you've, like you said, you've seen a few bad weeks from Darrell Henderson, like Malcolm Brown's kind of there. So I'm wondering if we're going to see more work from Akers. He has a touchdown in 2 consecutive games now. So I've been stashing him on 2 of my teams, and I keep waiting for the Rams to start using him more and more. And he's looked good the last 2 weeks with the limited opportunity he's got. So maybe this is finally the time where he starts to see a little bit more work. And I really like the schedule going forward if he can start to see more work. So I think Akers is somebody, if he's out there, which he probably is, just throw on your bench and see, hey, in the Cardinals game, maybe they start to give him more touches, and then you can trust him going forward after that. Because if I see him get like 15 carries in this next game against the Cardinals, like I'm going to feel pretty comfortable starting him on Thursday night against the Patriots the week after that. And that would be the first week of fantasy playoffs.
Yeah, I just pulled it up quick. 27.9% owned is all in ESPN leagues. Cam Akers is widely available. He's probably going to be the apple of a number of owners' eyes after another touchdown here this week. It looks like that percentage actually decreased last week, down 0.4 percent from the prior week. So that's interesting. But yeah, I think Tanner lays out a lot of good points where Akers seems to be the guy who should ascend to a bigger role. It's just a question of will he? And Darrell Henderson hasn't looked terrible at times this year, but it's been rough sledding late for him. Malcolm Brown is just kind of a guy I think that you mix in to spell whoever is the primary back there. Yeah, I like the argument for Akers up here on the depth chart, and hopefully see some more work. A lot of people heading into the fantasy playoffs to scoop Akers, and like Tanner said, you might be able to benefit in a big way down the stretch if that does indeed pan out. Wanted to jump into a couple of the injuries from yesterday, just kind of throw them out there. I might have missed something. So Philip Lindsay did have a knee injury in that Broncos-Saints game. He didn't return from that. DJ Moore went down late with an ankle injury for Carolina. Daniel Jones, of course, that hamstring, the Giants quarterback there. Got a little Colt McCoy action yesterday. That was one of my favorite stats of the day. Zach Taylor was playing at Nebraska at the same time Colt McCoy was at Texas. So here they were, both Big 12 quarterbacks. Now one is coaching, and the other is still trying to be a backup quarterback in the league. So that made me chuckle. I was probably watching too much of that game to hear that stat, but that's what happens when you live in New York. And then let's see here. Janoris Jenkins of the Saints, back to that Denver-New Orleans game. The corner there, he went down with a knee injury. And a couple linemen of note, neither of which were serious, but both did have knee injuries. Anthony Costanzo with the Colts and the Packers center, Corey Linsley. Any thoughts, I guess, on those names, or did you have another? I might have missed something here. So,
No, you got all the injuries that I've written down here. This wasn't an injury, but I'll throw out Jonathan Taylor just because he didn't play this week. But that was because he had his girlfriend had COVID, and so he was close contact. So that's why he didn't play in that game. So he should be back for next week. But DJ Moore is probably the biggest takeaway for fantasy purposes. The Panthers and the Bucks are both on bye next week. So that's a situation where you might not even get an update for a little while because you're not going to see him back until at soonest week 14. If he is back for week 14 and this injury isn't as serious as a lot of people are expecting, it's going to take some guts to start him in the first week of the fantasy playoffs, coming off of an injury, coming off of a bye when he's been kind of inconsistent all season. But it was like a non-contact thing. I thought there was potential for a knee injury there, so that's promising that they're calling it an ankle injury at least.
Yeah, that kind of goes back to what I was saying with Robbie Anderson earlier. His name got floated up when we were running through some of the wide receiver performances. DJ Moore's just been so inconsistent this year. I think it takes guts to start him healthy or banged up here at all at this point. So it'll be interesting to see what comes of that. And Philip Lindsay, you feel for, I think, a guy like that, at least I do. I feel for all the Broncos as we've already been over, but Lindsey's been in and out of the lineup all year, more out than in. Second fiddle here to Melvin Gordon and sustaining another knee injury yesterday. I was kind of excited for him to get back from those initial, I think it was toe or foot injuries that he was dealing with that caused him to miss a few weeks there.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah, but it really hasn't panned out, I think, even in a PPR format here. Broncos have a lot of young talent in that offense, so it just feels like they're a couple pieces away. And I know they've had a lot of defensive injuries. Von Miller, Jarrell Casey, both going down. We're not even playing at all in Miller's case, but Denver's close. They're a team to keep an eye on, I think, next year, as soon as next year. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on Drew Lock? I guess we can touch on that quick while we're on the subject. Like, is he a viable quarterback here to carry this team to the next level, or does John Elway need to go after yet another signal caller, I guess, this offseason?
I'm going to take a page out of Drew Lock's honesty playbook here. I don't think I've been watching him enough this season to really give you a good answer on that.
That's right.
I just haven't watched a lot of Broncos games. But
most are ugly, so you're not missing a ton.
Did you see his quote that he said about like every time he drops back, like, or half the times he releases the ball, he's like scared that it's going to be a pick. Like, he said that like 2 or 3 weeks ago. So that just I appreciate, I respect the honesty, but that just shows you like he doesn't feel comfortable at all right now, and it has definitely been showing. But a lot of people had the Broncos as like a sleeper playoff pick this year. And I agree with you. I think there's a lot of talent there, and I definitely see why a lot of people had them as a potential sleeper. Like, I definitely think it's a team that could turn it around. And they have a lot of solid pieces on defense too. So
yeah, I was one of those people who kind of went back and forth, I think, on Denver in the offseason, and I was able to get a good number on their win total, so I bet it under 8. Feeling pretty good about that, I think, at this point. They are, I think, to me, are worse than their 4 wins would suggest here. But I don't know. I think if you're banking on Denver to be a playoff team this year, health notwithstanding here to some of these other pieces, but you were banking on Drew Lock putting it together and being everything that Elway and the Broncos had hoped. And I think that quote, I hadn't seen it until you said it here, but that says a lot, that maybe he's not even as comfortable or not even looking as good as he outlined specifically. He's been able to pick up garbage time points and that big fourth quarter against the Chargers in the game they ultimately pulled out. But it'll be interesting to see what Denver does there. I'm inclined to believe they're going to go in another direction myself, but a lot of young talent, both sides of the ball. They'll be back. Don't worry. Denver's close. Let's see here. We hit injuries. Tanner, anything else you wanted to throw out there from what we've seen so far in Week 12? And then we can just kind of throw out our takes on tonight's game, which is kicked off here, and then we'll get on out of here.
I meant to bring it up when we were talking about Derrick Henry, but so I had the Titans going to the Super Bowl this year, and this past week just gave me a lot of confidence in that pick, because I think this game was personal for them. Like, in division, they lost a couple weeks ago to the Colts on that Thursday night game, and I just think they came into this game locked in and wanted to beat the Colts in Indianapolis, and they came in and they did that and they killed them. So I was really glad to see that from them. But I wanted to ask you a question before we closed up. Who do you think is the fantasy football MVP this year?
Fantasy football MVP. I'm going to cheat. I'm going to pull up some PPR numbers. So, all right. So let me preface my answer to MVP by saying I'm on a crusade here to get James Robinson his respect. He's not going to win Rookie of the Year. I'm fine with Justin Herbert winning Rookie of the Year. Um, James Robinson though has come out of nowhere, and
Yeah.
he's been a beast for a team that was not expected to do anything, and he's given you a weekly floor in terms of fantasy production, and he has the stats to back it up. Several 100-yard rushing games, several touchdowns. He can do both things. Undrafted out of Illinois State. I changed my Twitter name to Blue Collar Roddy James Robinson because to me, like you have Justin Herbert as he's the quarterback. He's the guy who's supposed to win. James Robinson's out here doing the dirty work as a running back, so he's just blue collar. Like I have a lot of respect for Robinson and what he's done. So
Yeah, he really is that entire offense right now.
absolutely, yeah. Looking at fantasy MVPs, it'll be tough to know for sure. I think until we know that he's fully healthy. But if the regular season is going to end after this week, even with his lackluster showing yesterday, it's got to be Alvin Kamara. Um, this is a guy who I like to go over. Had props for total touchdowns this year of like 10.5, and I was all over betting the over on that. Positive regression. Last year, really his only knock. He had the volume, he had yardage, he just wasn't finding the end zone. And I think going as a mid first round pick compared to where he's wound up here, which these numbers have him as the overall PPR RB1, full 12 points clear, it looks like, of Dalvin Cook at this point. And that's with just 6 points yesterday. So you can't deny what Kamara has done. Gets it done in both phases of the game, almost 600 yards receiving. I mean, you can rebuttal it if you want. Tyreek Hill, I think, has the performance of the year yesterday, no question, if we're handing out that award. Travis Kelce has been a revelation at the tight end position. Like, I don't know, what would you call it? Blowout player of the year, because he's ahead of Darren Waller, who's number 2 tight end by like 60 points here. I don't know. Who's your MVP?
I would call Kelce an extra roster spot.
Yeah,
Like everybody else is having a blank tight end, and you actually get consistent points in your lineup every week. So,
yeah. This was a year to draft Kelce. I know that's like a debate. Do I take the tight end early? And some years, it might pan out more than others. This was a year to take Travis Kelce early.
Yeah, I think this might have been like the biggest year to do it that I think I've ever seen. I can never personally do that and pull the trigger. I always I take my tight end late, or like I also really like Kittle, so I'm like I could take Kelce. So I usually just don't do it, but this would have definitely been the year to do it. The first MVP that popped into my head was James Robinson, just because he's sitting there as the RB4 and you picked him up off the waiver wire. So, I mean, if you take he was just a free star sitting on the waiver wire for you if you got him. So I think if you did a poll right now, I think I think he might be the most picked person. I think Dalvin Cook is another really good option. He's right there with Kamara, like 12 points below him. And I have Cook playing 10 games and Kamara 11. So they're neck and neck. And then the other player that I would say is Patrick Mahomes and Kyler Murray. I think they're just giving you a difference at the quarterback position right now. Not as much as Kelce as a tight end, but I think it's comparable. And this has been Kyler's first bad week, but I have him in a lot of leagues, and he's the reason why I'm doing really well this year. Just like he's putting up 30-point games, 40-point games, and 30. So for me, it's all of those guys I just said, and then along with Derrick Henry, probably.
Yeah, I like all those names a lot. Robinson definitely intrigues me. I watched a fair bit of that Browns-Jaguars second half there yesterday, and the pile moving touchdown there to give them a chance to tie at the end. Yeah, he had his offensive line helping out, but That's more the running back than I think some people want to realize, and just the stats that he has been able to put up in a team that is just barren in terms of guys who can consistently go out there and produce around him. Three different quarterbacks, still getting it done. Offensive line is not great. We all know that. They're losing all these games, yes. Just give James Robinson his respect. Like,
He's so good.
That's all I ask. That's the only reason I got my Twitter name like it is. I might have to write an article and spout off, but yeah, he's blue collar rookie of the year. I'll give him fantasy football MVP if you are. I was trying not to make that much of a splash, but hey, I'm here for it. All right, real quick. Monday Night Football tonight. Seahawks Eagles. This game is in Philadelphia. This is a big time need for Philadelphia if they're going to really keep pace, I guess, at this point in the NFC East, because the Giants and Washington have passed them by in the standings. Philly, of course, with that tie, sort of a half game in hand, I guess you would call it. We kind of touched on fantasy when we answered that YouTube question. If you have any other thoughts, feel free to throw those out there. But any leans, any handicaps for this game? How do you kind of see it playing out here? Seattle a win, they'll be in sole possession of first in the NFC West with the Rams losing yesterday. So curious to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, the Eagle, I mean, a lot has been made, especially after last week, of the way Carson Wentz. He's kind of just the butt of all the jokes right now. Jalen Hurts actually got QB1 work this week in practice. So if Jalen Hurts somehow, I don't think it's going to happen. I think they're committed to wins. But if Jalen Hurts somehow becomes a starter at some point, then you're looking at an entire backup squad for the NFC East, which I think would be pretty fitting for this division, assuming Daniel Jones is also hurt. And then you got Alex Smith coming in for Washington. And then obviously Dak Prescott getting hurt. So I think that would be kind of funny. But I'm having trouble seeing the line for this game right now. But I do a pick 'em pool, and I took the Seahawks as one of my, like, you pick 8 games. I took the Seahawks as one of my picks here. I just think they're the better team here, no, like, without a doubt. And Russell Wilson is, in my opinion, the best quarterback in the league. And that's enough for me to take the Seahawks against a 3-win team on any given week.
Yeah, the Eagles have been burning me a lot in terms of ATS picks. It feels like this year I've been trying to take them as an underdog. In a way, it kind of felt like the right side against Cleveland, even though they didn't get there. So you know what I did? I took them again this week. I was getting 5. It's a home game. They got to win. I'm like, what the heck? I'm going to Philadelphia again. I think what I'm most interested to see is how the Seattle defense looked a lot better, I thought, in that game against Arizona. Now, how much of that was Kyler Murray's injury, which we've already kind of discussed here on the show, and how much of that was Seattle stepping up. But there was a little bit of a pass rush there. Carlos Dunlap found his way into the backfield there at one point for a big sack down the stretch. The Eagles' offensive line has been a mess. Can they do that here in Philadelphia, whether it's Wentz or Hurts back there? I just pulled up real quick the latest on Jalen Hurts, and it looks like the Eagles are planning to give him more snaps than he's seen in any game all year. So there could be some wrinkles coming Seattle's way, and the Eagles need to put those wrinkles out there. They need a good team showing, good defensive showing. Chris Carson's back. I'm not convinced he's going to be super effective. I think the Eagles should show up front defensively. Guys like Brandon Graham, Fletcher Cox, etc. But Wilson should be able to pick the secondary apart. No offense to Darius Slay, but there's just not a whole lot else back there. That's a matchup I'm interested in as well, Metcalf and Slay, to see them going at it on the outside. So I went with the Eagles on the spread. I liked under 50 earlier in the week. My totals have been terrible, though, so I probably shouldn't listen to me there. I feel like every game I say it's going to go under.
That's what I struggle with the most, is totals.
Yeah, so it's funny. I was doing great on them through the first, I don't know, 9 weeks. Past few weeks, total crap show. And meanwhile, my ATS has like been on the rise, so I was not. I was 500 ish first half of the season, and now I'm like so. I guess I can't have the best of both worlds, but what are you gonna do? That's betting. Should be a fun one tonight. Both teams could use a win.
Yeah,
Um,
I think it'll be a competitive game. And like Philly, I mean, they got 3 wins, but even against good teams, they always seem to make it competitive. They don't win those games, but they know how to at least put up a fight against them. So,
Yeah, absolutely. That's I think part of why I really liked getting 5 points here. You don't even have to win the game, obviously, when you're catching five there on the spread as the underdog. You lose by a field goal, and that's a cover. So I think it does remain competitive. If it does not remain competitive, that says a lot about the Eagles' outlook for the rest of the season. I wouldn't expect them to even be in the NFC East race if they aren't showing up and competing tonight. So um, I guess we will find out. Um, that was everything I had written down. Anything else you wanted to touch on as far as Week 12 fantasy going forward? And anything I might have missed?
no, I think that's it for me. Just I guess one last question. Do you have like somebody you want to win the NFC East? Because for me, it's Washington. I would like. I'm kind of find myself pulling for them right now.
It's funny you asked that. Anyone but Dallas for me. And here's why. I have a bet on the Eagles at plus money to win the NFC East. So I'd love to cash out. The Giants are my dad's favorite team. Growing up, I always kind of had a soft spot for the Giants, just sitting with him, cheering them on Sunday afternoons. So he's all hyped that they're in first place right now, and so it's fun to have that with him. But Washington is like the other team that I'm just like, I want to see Ron Rivera do it. And like they don't even have a name, football team. Like, can they please be in the playoffs? Like that'd be so funny.
Hmm.
I don't know. I would be happy with any of the three teams, honestly. I think I think my heart wants the Giants or Washington. Uh, my head wants the Eagles because I do have a little money riding on them as division winners at a good price. And here they are looking like they're going to let me down there. Just no Cowboys. I'll be good.
Yeah, I respect that.
All right. Uh, that's the other thing I'll add too. In a weird way, I feel like whoever comes out and gets that 4 seed, wouldn't it be so 2020 if they just go out and like win on wild card weekend against probably who they'll get, the Bucks maybe or the Rams or somebody in there. Like they would.
Uh-huh. Or the Cardinals. If I saw the Cardinals lose in the first round against Washington, oh man.
Yeah. Well, that Washington defensive front, they're a force to be reckoned with. All right, we are going to sign off. Thank you all for tuning in. Again, check out monkeyknifefight.com. Promo code Flurry get you some free money over there. Several weeks left here this NFL season, so make the most of it. Head on over and enjoy some of their props. And flurrysports.org. Keep it tuned in here all week long. Tons of fantasy football content, tons of NFL content, betting, you name it, college basketball. We got that going up there as well here with that season getting underway. Putting together a little staff fantasy football article with some less than 50% owned players. Everyone kind of chiming in with a guy they like here down the stretch of the season. Cam Akers on the show. Maybe he'll make an appearance in the article as well. So fun to get everyone together and do that. So be on the lookout for that here this week. The rankings, all that good stuff as usual as well. I feel like there was something else I wanted to throw out there.
I'm gonna work on my lighting situation for these future shows, so I don't look like a ghost. But this is my first time at home doing one of these, so there'll be some improvements for tomorrow.
Yeah, absolutely. Your Crimson Tide continue to roll. Maybe that was what I was forgetting. prime time against LSU this week. That should be a fun one. So
Yeah.
and my Rebels there from Ole Miss got the Egg Bowl. So we run the SIP, and that was fun to celebrate Saturday night as well. Things are looking up in the Lane Kiffin era. Now we just need a defense. But all right, Tanner, if you're good, I'm good. We're gonna get on out of here and enjoy some Monday Night Football.
All right, let's do it.
Yeah, thanks again, everyone, for tuning in, and we will see you next time. Have a good night.
Thanks.